Welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. Thank you for joining us. Our guest today, Victoria Pelletier, is a ball of energy. She had a life that started off so rough that a lot of people probably would never have done much with their lives. But this little girl who turned into this beautiful lady had so much determination. She was not going to live, and she has not. And she is showing other people how to live a really powerful life. I think that you will get a lot out of it. So please enjoy, tell your friends, share, and here we go. So Victoria, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. We are really looking forward to digging into all your stories. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
It's I've been looking forward to this for a long time now. So tell us, if you don't mind, kind of start at the beginning. Like, where were you born? What was life like as a child?
So I'm originally from Canada, so your listeners will know that only with a few words that will give me away, which I'll say them now. Out and about. I haven't been able to shake those. I now live in the U.S., and I've been between Canada and the U.S. for probably the last 20 years. I'm born in Eastern Canada to, sadly, a drug-addicted teenage mother who was very abusive to me. I am incredibly fortunate, however, to have been adopted out of that environment to a loving family who moved out to Western Canada, lower socioeconomic means. And I share those two things in particular because at some point very early in my youth, I was determined to be better than biology, the family I was born into, or the circumstances in which I was raised. And that became a big part of my drive and my why, to quote from Simon Sinek. And so that has just really propelled me to be better than where I came from. So that's the sort of genesis of Victoria Pelletier, and evolved, pretty significantly from this, fear-laden girl, incredibly resilient, but probably not in the most healthy of manners, who needed to learn to love eventually the woman that stood across from herself in the mirror. So that's where it all kind of began.
Oh, how exciting. We're going to have so much fun. Thank you. Okay. So you were, at what age? Your mother was abusive, and then I'm assuming police.
In and out of care for a number of years. And then she did actually know my adoptive parents. She gave them to me oftentimes after an episode. And so I was young, but I was 4, but it was so traumatic that I have very vivid memories, unfortunately, of those first 4 years with her.
Okay, so you said you had to become the woman that loved the woman in the mirror. That's not an overnight process. Talk to us a little bit about that, and why is it so important?
Oh, so it was. I actually don't think Kara was probably until my late 20s, early 30s. My mom, and my mom is the woman that raised me. She tried very hard to have me love me, and she created a safe environment for me. I was this tough kid. For those who might watch this on video, I've got this mane of curly hair that was much more strawberry when I was younger. And so I remember getting stopped when we were walking down the street, and some construction worker was like, "Aren't you the cutest little thing?" And I'm like, "What the expletive are you looking at?" I was tough. And I tended to push people away out of fear of rejection. And I would even do that with my parents. And I remember her saying consistently to me, "Tori, we are not going to give you away." She created safety. And she did something that I didn't really appreciate until, again, much further into my adulthood, around having an incredible amount of self-awareness and the ability to be really reflective. She would sit me down for hours after an incident or, something, some self-destructive thing I'd done or whatever it was, and to talk about it, understand why I had these emotions, why I reacted in those ways. And I embraced that much more so, as I said, as I got into my 20s and early 30s. And so I'm hyper aware. It doesn't mean I still don't have some immediate emotions, viscerally sometimes, but the ability to process and work through that and make decisions in terms of how I'm going to act. And so it was a journey. And I think in many times, particularly professionally, so I also became an executive at a very early age, and I wore a mask because I was fearful of rejection. I hate the phrase, but it's probably appropriate. Your audience will understand imposter syndrome. So I would never show emotions or vulnerability and all those things. And at some point, again, I needed to remove that mask to be a better kind of leader, a better kind of human. So no, it did not happen overnight. And it's still an ongoing journey, but I can very happily say I love the woman that I stare at, in the mirror, warts and all.
Right. So that process, it makes so much sense that you were tough. I grew up very similarly, but completely differently. Of course, we all have our own path, and the toughness I don't see in you at all now. How you had to completely change your identity. Oh, and before that, I'm so sorry. We're going to get back to that. But you were talking about how it was when you were growing up, and that you were determined that you were going to be better than your biology. What gave you that determination? Did you see someone, and how did you go from where you were to having that?
I had no role models in physical life. I think, my mom had me watch a lot of like evening television with her. And I remember one of her favorite shows was LA Law. Like, that'll totally date me now in saying that. And I wanted to be a lawyer from like probably age 10. And she watched, her other show was Dallas. So seeing, like oil magnates. And so I saw a very different life than we experienced at home. There was never food insecurity. I always had clothes, but there was no money for anything else. I didn't get to go on vacations. I didn't get to go on my school graduation trip, like all those kinds of things. But I saw on television, and I just thought like, and my mom did say, you have to do better than us. My mom was a secretary and my dad was a janitor. And so, she pushed me. And again, I had these not real, like, role models from television, but I was just like, I'm not Julie was my biological mother. I'm like, I'm not looking back from the place that Julie came from, nor kind of my current context and environment. And so I just aspired to more. And I do think there's just something innately in my DNA, fight or flight. Like, I am a fighter, like, and I'm competitive. And so I'm going to not let anything stop me from achieving whatever goal or objective I've set for myself.
Well, apparently not. I mean, your life has taken so many amazing turns. I don't want to leave the healing yourself from loving yourself, because I think there's so much negative connotation to when do you cross into arrogance and all that silliness that is the reason people won't work on themselves. They won't do the work to where they can love themselves. What kind of work did you have to do?
Oof. There was much. And so that I needed to do. I had a nickname I found out in my like mid to late 20s professionally, and it was the Iron Maiden. And, I've always understood that perception is reality. So I was being perceived in a way that is actually not innately who I am, but I wore that mask. And as I said, I did that out of fear, out of insecurity, out of not feeling a sense of strong belonging as I looked around. And so I needed to start to do things that made me really uncomfortable, to completely pivot and change, not just the perception of me, the reality of how I showed up. So I'm a strong believer in stepping into your discomfort zone, because it's in that place where I believe that, growth and transformation and opportunity comes. So that was one. And I had to reassess, actually, at one point, my definition of success. And you talk about arrogance. I don't believe I've ever been arrogant, but my vision of success, as I defined it, was in part by those early childhood years. It was around status and wealth and having more. And maybe I could prove outwardly to everyone that I am successful because I have these things. Well, when my ex had cancer the first time around, it started to shift a lot of that perception and understanding, as they say, health is your wealth, but understanding how important the sense of family, community was. And combined with how I was, showing up as a leader at work, I started to realize, as I broke down the barriers, the mask that I wore, my relationships changed with people. And then my definition of success changed dramatically in terms of doing things that bring me or the others around me personal or professional joy or value, saying no to the things that don't contribute to that, to focusing on legacy and impact, and what do I want to be known for? And it's not going to be those material possessions that I've amassed because I was an executive at such an early age.
Right. I mean, that is beautiful. You have, so what is your current definition of success?
So, and I've said this to my children as well, who I think they at times have felt a little bit of pressure because of what they see in me from a career standpoint, work I do in media, et cetera, that success will be defined by the individual, and ultimately, are you happy? And so, for my kids, it's like, if you choose to have a partner, find one that makes you happy. If you choose to have children, and by the way, I've told one or both of them, like, you still need to make me a grandmother. So, although I had them young, I'm like, so don't start anytime soon. But, so if you choose to be partnered, if you choose to have children, and from a career perspective, do something that, you're passionate about, that brings you joy. And hopefully that affords the lifestyle you want as well. And so that's the path that I've chosen. And for me, it is a big part of it is actually now about what I say no to.
Okay, so Warren Buffett says no to 99.5% of the things that get brought to him because that's not his wheelhouse. He doesn't know those things, so he says no. What percent of things do you say no to?
Oh, actually, that's a good. I don't even know if I've been asked that question before. I don't know. I mean, I feel I'm constantly assessing. Like, it comes up all of the time. I hate when people ask me, how do you do or have it all? How do you fit it all in? I'm like, it's all life. So that's actually how I look at things that might be more strictly for professional purposes versus networking versus friendship versus family. And so it's hard to have this ongoing running. I think the things that come my way now are I feel like I've got a strong enough brand and I've put enough out there that what comes to me is generally the right fit. So I'm probably only having to say no to 10 to 20% of things.
Okay.
That said, I'm very good at delegating and outsourcing the stuff that still has to get done that I just won't do personally.
Right. And my hypothesis is you'll end up, 50%, 70%. And that's just the way it goes. The more you get recognized and people realize the value that you bring, it's just so much better. CEOs who run 5, 9-figure businesses, how do they possibly do that? Well, they say no to almost everything. Right.
And maybe I'm going to have to reevaluate, and I'll come back to you later, Kara. Tonight, I'll be ruminating on this. I'm like, no, it is probably more like 70%. But
well, I mean, personally, when you get a personal, hey, can you come do this neighborhood garage sale thing? Is it easier now to say no, or I'm already booked, or what? A lot easier.
It is. And I'll even say, I get asked, I've also been a professional speaker for a number of years, and I get asked to do many talks, and there's an ask and many times to do it for free. And I make some decisions. So I sit on not-for-profit boards, and if it's a good cause, will I flex on my price, or will I potentially do it? Maybe. But, I've been very clear around my years in business and what I can bring to the table, not just in work, but from a speaking perspective. So that's one place I find myself saying no a lot, or it doesn't align with my values or interests, or do I want to place myself in that situation? How does that reflect on me?
Right. And the thing about experience that people say they way underestimate the value. I have this hypothesis that 80% of any profession is really not that good at it. It's the top 20%. The 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle is real. And so you need to go and look for it. But the saving grace of that is the 20% are doing 80% of the business. So that's that we don't feel it as much as it seems in that statement. However, the more you grow and the more valuable you are, the more people are going to ask you for favors and can you come speak at this and do that. And so your litmus test on whether you say yes or no is?
There's no one standard answer. I mean, for me, it needs to align to who I am as a human. I've worked very, very hard on, developing my brand and clarity around that, and I'm consistent. And so is it aligned to that? Although that said, I have, I also like to be a contrarian and bring a diversity of thought and perspective. So I can tell you I've been on, I'm more liberal leaning when it comes to social justice. And I've been on Fox News and things like that, which, so that's a decision for a different reason to go. But generally, when it comes to speaking, does it align? Do they want me there for the right reason? What am I talking about? If I'm going to do it for free, I'm doing it because I'm passionate about, oftentimes it's women or underserved minority groups that I'll be talking to. And that speaks to me and who I am. And I want to, create advancement for those populations. So that's kind of the test for me. Ultimately, does it connect to my values, to who I am, what my brand is, and the things that I care about?
Okay. Darren Hardy talked about it, and he said, if someone comes to you and says, hey, Victoria, do you want to go to the grocery store with me? And you're kind of like, yeah, not really, right? Or if they come to you and they say, hey, Victoria, where's your favorite place in the world to travel? Like your very favorite?
Oh, France.
If I was to come to you and say, hey, Victoria, I've got tickets for you and your family for France, but you have to go in like 5 weeks and it's all paid and all. Your answer is?
Yes.
So he says, if it's not heck yes, only he doesn't say heck. If it's not heck yes, it's no. So I do think that way, and it helps a lot to just go, well, I'm willing to do it. However, it's really not what I want to do or need to do right now, so I'm booked.
Yeah, I have a saying actually, and it's a little bit aligned to that. Where there's conviction, there is capacity. And so that's how I often think also around how do I do all the things that I do? If I have conviction behind it, then I will create the capacity to be able to do it.
Okay. So let's just talk about the functionality. You wake up in the morning. What does your morning look like? Do you have a routine?
Oh, yeah. I'm a workout or fitness fanatic. So I work out 6 days a week, take 1 day for recovery. And so for me, it's getting up early in the morning, going to the gym. And even at the gym, I listen to my news podcasts. I want to be as up to date as I can. And then I shift into one of a few different things depending on what I feel like. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, to learn, but every once in a while there's just a fun one in there, or to music. And that's for me, I'm not a vision board person. I don't need to talk through positive affirmations. That works for many people, and it, good on you. But for me, that's my moment to center myself, both mind and body, is at the gym, and then come and get ready. And then I've got a routine over how I, get through my emails before I then hop on a myriad of back-to-back calls, usually for the rest of the day.
Okay, so you recently had something pretty cool happen. You had a TED Talk that you were invited to do. You didn't apply. You didn't have one of your best buddies say, hey, she's the one. You got invited to do, and it just got published. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, as I said, I'm not the vision board type person, but I manifested this. I put it out into the world that I wanted to be invited to speak at TED. And I will say it's a TEDx. I do want to be on the main TED stage at some point. And it's a result of having been very, very focused on building, a strong personal brand over the last 20 plus years. And I have been a speaker for a number of years. And so the organizers of this TEDx had seen me speak, had heard about me. I didn't know the organizer. And one of the topics I speak on, which is resilience, happened to be the theme of their event. So not only did they invite me, but they asked me to be the opening speaker for the entire event, which was pretty cool.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so when you found out you were going to be the opening speaker, what happened inside of you?
Oh, I rarely am I nervous when it comes to speaking. Now, there's butterflies, which I just view that as energy as I'm getting on stage. But this, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to set the tone that actually, I was a little bit nervous about it. I'm like, I felt more pressure not to mess up.
Right.
But then also, once it was done, I was like, I have to sit back and just watch the rest of the speakers and engage. And at like in the intermission, halftime, actually go out and mingle and have a glass of wine with people. It was good.
Oh my gosh, how exciting. Really, that you manifested that. So is manifestation, has that been a big part of your life?
It has. And I tend not to, I'm not a super spiritual person in any way, but rather I set goals for myself. And I work to achieve those. I sign a lot of my social media posts with one of two or both hashtags. One is unstoppable, and the other, no excuses.
Love it.
And so for me, rather than manifestation, it's just about having a clear vision for myself and being both strategic and intentional about the steps I'm going to take to achieve those.
Obviously. Okay, so a couple of books, and when the book, The Power of Whole Human Leadership, that to me, like, I haven't read the book, but that to me is like a holistic doctor versus a doctor who's going to say, let me give you a pill for that symptom.
Yes, very, very much so.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your book, and how did you have, what discipline did it take for you to get all the way to having multiple books published, but your first one especially?
The first one I was invited to contribute to, it's called Unstoppable. And knowing that, as I just said, that's kind of my life's philosophy, I was like, well, that one is just destined. So I contributed a chapter to that one. So that was the first. The second one is called Influence Unleashed, and it's around personal branding and building a lasting legacy related to that. And this third one is the culmination of, it makes me feel very, very old when I say this, but 30 years of leadership experience. My first leadership role came at age 14. So actually 34, I'm 48 now. So it's a result of that, of not seeing amazing role models in the workplace. When I entered it, it was much more around command and control. And I've seen a massive shift in evolution. We've spoken about it for a long time. And I don't like the social media headlines that were grabbed with quiet quitting and the Great Resignation. But that was a cry from the workforce for something very different. And a big part of that is actually connected to purpose and leadership. And so I left my last company and it was in transition. And I said, there's no other time. I have capacity right now to do this. So I'm going to put pen to proverbial paper around the lessons I've learned, the failures I've made, and what I've learned from those, so that hopefully I could help aspiring or current leaders do better, be better, as I've now experienced. And also I've been leading human capital businesses, consulting with other companies on how to improve their leadership, their cultures, change the dynamics in the workplace. So I literally just got the proof. You'll even see it's got here, not for resale, of it. It's released. I'm not sure when this will go live. It'll probably be live at that point, but September 10th, it's published officially. So I poured my heart. I had an incredible artist and illustrator who helped me not only with the cover, but everything inside. I'm really proud of that one.
Very cool. That is awesome. So in order to give back, you have to continuously be growing yourself. Where are you getting fed?
Oh, so many places. I mentioned the podcasts and audiobooks. That's one. So I'm like a voracious learner, and even listener. I'm a near speed reader, one. And even when I listen to podcasts, I listen at generally 1.5 times speed. So I'm consuming quickly. And I belong to like many networking groups. And I put myself in places with people who are different than me as well, because I actually think I'm going to learn so much more than others who, do and see a lot of what I do and see in my day job, so to speak. So there's a book called Never Eat Alone. And it's strategies around, networking and, and kind of selling. But my husband jokes that for him, it's always eat alone, because I use the opportunity to go for lunches and dinners and networking events, again, to consistently be, learning from others.
And that is the best way to learn is to be in real close proximity to people. And I know a lot of us, especially people there's a lot of similarities that we have. People that have been through really rough childhoods that don't really let people in. If they get too close, It's like, okay, I mean, we're loving and we're warm and all that, but you get it's a little too close, and it's not uncomfortable. It's too uncomfortable until you do the work, until you do get to where you can look in the mirror and say, "Oh, I'm really proud of you," you know. And you should, and I know you do. You should be so proud of the work you do, because culture is so important. It is shocking to me. I've seen the change, obviously, too. Massive. I grew up in the world of top down. You do whatever I say when I say it. That kind of thing, to a place now where I see signs. Please come work today, and you'll get paid today. Like, just please, I need a warm body who will be here and do it. And so the employers are having to change their tune. And so let's say you walked into a mom and pop restaurant, and they're doing pretty decent business, and you're consulting with them, and their culture is not good in the workplace. Well, what are some of the things that you would advise them to do?
I've never got into a restaurant before, so that would be an interesting one for me. There's no one single silver bullet, if you will, but I think a significant amount of it is around, as a leader in the business, how you communicate with the team. Are you transparent? Are you authentic? Are you empathetic? I also think it's about the type of relationship you build with your teams. If it's, to your comment around like just a warm bum in the seat, like that, they want to feel value. And so that's a really big part. So that part of that's connected to communication. You need to actually say it out loud. Don't think that they're going to know it because you've given them the bigger bonus or higher percentage of the tips in the restaurant that have come in. Like, you need to physically say that. I appreciate you. You've done really great work here. How can I help you succeed? Or then, so restaurant, again, there might be limited, paths, but I think in more of the corporate world, that's a big part of it. Let's talk about how do we help you develop, get you where you want to get to. And I am a massive advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think people want to work in environments where there are people who look like them, sound like them, have had some similar lived experiences to them. I think that's critically important as well.
Okay, so I can't agree with you more about, even if it's not for the noble reasons that you're standing for it for, even if that's not your motive, my gosh, expose yourself to people that are different than you, because they know things that you don't know. They know a lot of things that you don't know. And you may pick up one or two things, or you may really change because you got exposed to different cultures. And when you actually work with someone, it's not just you can be polite to anyone for 5 minutes, but when you work with someone, it's a relationship.
It is, very much so.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of your other book, Influence Unleashed, that's been out for how long now?
It came out in January of this year of 2024.
So who writes 2 books and does all this stuff that you're doing? Who does that?
I know, actually, my husband joked. He said, I think you're busier in your unemployment than when you were employed. Although I actually couldn't decide, Kara, between the 2 topics. 2 of the topics I'm asked to speak on most frequently, beyond kind of I have an unstoppable keynote that weaves in my story, resilience, etc. Beyond that, I'm asked to speak on, and I do coaching around personal branding. And the other is I'm often asked to coach leaders. And so I was like, which one do I do? And I'm like, let's just do both. I'm like, I had no idea what I was like biting off there. Now, I will say I had an amazing team around that really helped. So in strong editors, I recorded the audio for it as well. And so like the audio editors, I mentioned the illustrators, so amazing team, and I did hybrid publishing, and so I had quite a bit of help on that front. But it was a lot. I don't think I would ever choose to do 2 in 1 year again.
However, how does it feel that those are done? You don't have that to do. It's not haunting you. It's done. How does that feel?
Oh, it feels great. Great to do it, and it supplements all that I am and I stand for and I speak on and I do for a day job. So, it was really more, I think that, for your listeners, I think there's some misperceptions from some people who do this to think that you're getting rich off books. You are not. I'm not going to get, there's some who are, there's bestsellers for sure. But, this is around solidification of thought leadership in the space, and for me, connectedness to not only what I do for work, but what I speak on. And so how do we bring all of those pieces together? So I'm really proud to have accomplished it and get it done in the time frame as well. So now as I'm about to embark upon stepping into a new executive role, I can just, focus on that.
Oh, so that's fun. You can't drop that bomb without telling us. What is it?
I can't tell you because it's not public yet. But by the time this airs, you can your listeners can go look me up on LinkedIn and see where I've landed. So it's exciting. It's a transformation. One of my nicknames is the turnaround queen. I like taking meaty, hairy challenges. That's part of what excites me. And so that is a big part of what this is. Also working with some leaders that I like and know and trust, which is also really important to me.
It's everything. It's everything. You become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it is so wonderful when you work with people that you just synergize and you've got a great culture. And that's what you speak about, right? You're the
right.
Culture woman. So, and I understand culture because I'm in a great one in my career too. And it is so rewarding. So when do you start the new career? That is a job, like a 40-hour a week kind of thing?
Yeah. So I'm working through all those details right now. I'm actually headed to a leadership meeting next week, even though I'm not officially an employee yet. But it was just too important to miss. So we'll figure that. So it'll probably be in the next month or so. Like I said,
that is
really
very cool that you get to kind of go into that meeting as incognito and check people out.
Yeah. So actually, I'm really glad that they invited me, and it's just such an important meeting that had I not participated that and just started a few weeks later, so I'm glad they were thinking about that. So it means I needed to juggle a few things to clear out the calendar for next week, but it's great. So yeah, next, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, I would anticipate starting, and I'm excited.
Okay, well, I'm excited for you. Do you have any podcast books that are top of mind? First one that anyone could benefit from?
There's many. I'm a big fan of Adam Grant. So when we think about workplace and culture, and actually there's a podcast that Brene Brown hosted with both Simon Sinek and Adam Grant. I think it was a 2 or 3-parter. That one was great. And then I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell and all of his. That I just find it gets me thinking very differently as well. And what else would I say? Then there's just some really interesting ones that I listen to. Andrew Huberman podcast. Now he's a scientist, and he talks and brings on guests from a whole variety of different backgrounds. The only thing is they're very, very long podcasts. They're not in bite-sized chunks, which makes it really difficult. And there's a newer one that I found. It's called My First Million, and it's these 2 entrepreneurs who are experts in or subject matter or thought leaders in their own rights in their spaces, but they bring on some cool people. And so it's everything from, and being a sort of a brand expert, one of them was talking about, and he doesn't refer to it as brand, he was talking about content creation, but it was so great that I actually shared it with several of my clients and said, you should think about this, they had a guy who came on and talked about biohacking. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So that one's called My First Million.
Okay. Gave us all kinds of good stuff. So thank you very much. Your book will be coming out by the time this airs. You guys just go on Audible and grab it. She read it herself, which is always better when you have the actual author reading it. And it will put all your contact information below. And guys, listen, this is a podcast, yes, but it's also on YouTube. So if you want to communicate with Victoria or myself, the best way is just chat in there, and she can answer, I can answer. It's kind of a cool thing. So please leave some comments below, and we'll get right back to you. Thank you.